So I'm so excited to have Leslie Weisberg with me today because who does not love an estate sale? I mean, I cannot tell you that my husband, I have dragged to more estate sales. Well, I should back up. I've probably dragged him around the country to more flea markets. That's where I think I first started my love of estate sales because I am like a flea market. That's where I first started my love of sort of that story of where did this come from? And I think that people love, that something old can be something new again. So that must be sort of where you come from. Like you must love to see, things in people's homes and the story behind them.
Oh, for
And
sure.
I
Yeah.
mean, and so I'm so excited to talk to you about it and your business. Give me a little bit so people have an idea who you are and how and a little bit about how you got into estate sales. And then,
Sure.
we'll talk about the whole, who your partners are, because I adore them.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Well, growing up, I had an aunt who was actually in the business. She did
Oh, okay.
estate sales, and she was so interesting. And she used to set up at the Royal Oak Flea Market way back when it first became. And I'd go visit her there, and she liked the fine, like Tiffany Sterling and crystal and jewelry. And my uncle had the other side of the table, which was, believe it or not, guns and knives and hunting stuff and like guy stuff. And she didn't drive, so it was a good mix because he would take her there. And so she would tell me stories, like you said, to know the story or the provenance behind something.
Yeah.
And how come this one's special and this item's better than that item. And
I tell you, Leslie, I used to go, like, I still do, like I'll go to the Royal Oak Flea Market, and I can't even say that I buy things, but I'll look in the cases and I'll think, like, how did that wedding ring end up there? Or,
right.
why are those napkins there? Who had them?
Right.
Where did they come from? And I mean, I can't tell you how often my husband will be like, you spent hours there and you didn't buy anything? And
honestly, I used to take my kids too, and it was more a history lesson.
Mhm.
I'm also a retired school teacher. I don't know if people realize that. I taught art and many other subjects. I actually taught math and science also, and everything, reading. But I would take my kids to the flea market and tell them what a coffee grinder is and what this old school telephone is. And to me, it's history. So it was a great history lesson for my kids when they were growing up, to know how the beginnings of things were, what things were in the very beginning.
Like the rotary dial phones that our kids haven't seen.
Right. But even like my kids, when they were little, some people still had, their aunt had a rotary dial phone, which is so funny. But you go through and you show them these farm tools, or you show them this piece of art glass, and you explain that this is hand blown and it's not made in a factory, or to the history behind things. So to me, taking my kids as a school teacher and always trying to make things into a lesson and kind of like showing them this or that, I thought it was really an important situation. Or why this piece of art is actually a painting and not printed. Like how many old timers have the Mona Lisa hanging in their house? You know what I mean? Like how many copies have we seen? And they're huge, but the Mona Lisa is really a small little piece of art.
Right.
So to see the reality of things and talk about how these things are created, why this piece of furniture is better than that piece of furniture. So I grew up in the business basically because of my aunt, and she started me on a sterling collection. Spoons and Tiffany pieces, and she would tell me why this pattern is better than that pattern, as far as flatware is concerned. So I learned a lot of flatware patterns and some of the vintage glass pre-World War II, and sometimes why it's so important. And we're very lucky, of course, being in Michigan, where there's a lot of furniture manufacturers. So we have a lot of mid-century designers here. So for me, I mean, the first earliest recognition I have of going to a garage sale was when I was 7. And I still have the 2 things I bought from there. I bought an unfinished cross stitch, which I finished, that says "Yours is the earth and everything in it." It's hanging in my lower level right now. And I finished it and had it framed as an adult. I never finished it. I started it, and then one day I said, I'm going to finish this thing. And then I bought an old prayer book, Jewish prayer book, that I thought was so interesting the way the cover was. So I actually still own the 2 things that I first bought back in the day,
Wow.
which is so interesting because I don't save everything, and I'm not a collector these days. And I have to say, there was a time I sold all my Tiffany stuff except for maybe 2 pieces. I became more of a minimalist, but my tastes change. And the lovely part is that when you sell something to somebody else, it becomes precious to them. And so telling them where it came from and knowing the history is very important. I'll ask people at flea markets, hey, how did you get this thing? Because I've gone across the whole United States and gone to flea markets everywhere I go. And I'll say, how did you come to own this piece? And I think that people like that.
But I know that you do that. We've had this conversation about how you do that with your estate sales. I mean, your estate sales are so personal to you, every one of them, that when you meet with a family, you want to know the history too behind, pieces, because when you're selling something, you want to sort of pass that love and those history lessons on to the next buyer. I should say that as people look behind me, this came from an estate sale, one of yours.
That's right. I remember.
Yeah.
I measured it. It was a great sale because that house, these people, everything in there was as if they bought it yesterday. It was so pristine. And
so pristine.
Yes. And
I mean, I have to tell you, I just went to this estate sale. I got to be honest, like I went by because I just wanted to come say hi to you.
Right.
It was a Sunday. You were closing up. And the funny part is, and I tell this story, I'm like, oh my God, Leslie, there's like nothing left. And you're like, oh, there's, stuff in the library. And I went in the library. I'm like, is she kidding me? What's in the library? And there were these gorgeous bookshelves and desks. And I wanted in my office to have a grown-up office, but I was going to build bookshelves and desks. And I was like, Leslie, what's in the office? And you said all of that desk, and I'm like, I'll take it. I didn't even ask you what price. It was just this gorgeous. It looked like it had come and been delivered to their house that day.
Right, pristine.
Pristine. It's beautiful in my office, and I just so enjoy it as brand new to me. And I love it. And
which makes me happy when that happens, because what I try to, going back to like the teaching thing, when I was teaching art history, I would have, like if I was teaching photography, I'd have the old cameras, the old Brownie cameras and the old dagger type, how it used to be on glass and it used to be on metal, the pictures that were, developed. And I would bring these I'd call them my, roving art history museums, and bring them in for the day and show kids Native American tapestries and different woven baskets and blackware pottery. So I made my lessons with my students very visual, because most people are visual learners. Sure. And I would show them all these artifacts, and it was a way to convey art history in non-boring ways to kids. It was like, are you kidding me? Like you remember college, you're remembering dates and years and when this period started, and that's not what kids need. So that was also a carryover from me growing up in this situation. And then I would collect very specific things to show students so that they would know. For printmaking, from the old printing presses, the little metal plates that were etched, I'd bring them in, the kids would roll ink on it and print with them. And I'd say, now this is how newspapers were made. So the kids learned quite a bit in my classroom from these experiences, which was great. But going back to the personal side, I remember One of the biggest houses I did in the early days was in Detroit on Lincolnshire. My dear friends hired me to do their estate sale, and I just started the business, and I was like, oh, wow, it was such an honor that they would trust me with this, like, I don't know, it was like maybe 12,000 square feet house that had multi different floors, and it was a hoarder situation, but gorgeous hoarder situation. And I remember doing all the research and getting the house liquidated and inviting dealer friends of mine in to buy things on invitation. And the woman whose stuff it was saved clippings from the estate sales she bought some of the stuff at.
Oh,
So to
wow.
have that provenance, some things were from like the Dodge Mansion and, different things like that. So that transferred to the new owners of those pieces. And when I'm talking to somebody at their house, I listen to all their stories, whether they know I am or not. They tell me why they don't want to keep these things anymore, or why they can't part with certain things. And even though my partners kind of like don't hear this part, and it's kind of, I always say to people, I can always sell it in the future, but if I sell it, I can never get it back for you. So if it's near and dear to your heart, I have to tell you, you need to keep it for a while, because if you call me on the second day of a sale and say, Leslie, if that didn't sell, I kind of want it, and I just saw it walk out the door, I'm going to get sick inside. So, there's times that there's that piece they're hemming and hawing. I said, hey, it's just one more thing. So if it's that personal, it makes me sad if they're not happy. It's a hard thing for people to let go sometimes, because the material object becomes so personal. But what I have to tell them, and Deborah, who's my partner, and I kind of say the same thing, it needs to be loved by somebody else, and let them, you're not going to go to an estate sale, a garage sale, or a flea market and buy something and stick it in a closet. You're going to put it out, and every time you walk past it, you're going to say, oh my gosh, I got that at that really nice house, and I remember buying it, and it's so beautiful. And they're going to walk past it and re-love it for many, many years to come.
I think that's so true. This past weekend, a good friend of Deborah's and yours was having she called it not quite an estate sale, not quite a garage sale. And I went over and I bought a few things. She does catering, and I bought some big platters, and two of the things I bought, I came home and I put out right away.
Sure.
And I keep walking by them, and she probably had them stuck away.
Right,
and
exactly.
They weren't terribly expensive, but I walk by and I'm like, look at my new things. They just bring, so much happiness,
It's really the ultimate recycling. It's the ultimate green.
Yeah.
Because I have to say, when it comes to breakables, it's really kind of sad. And that's why I really push to sell my breakables that are of not a consequence, that they're not really high end at low prices, because it's not cost effective to wrap each little breakable so perfectly that maybe in the transition between the house and donation, it might get damaged. So when I have those kind of non-important, I'm going to say, not that they're not important psychologically, but maybe not in the resale market, not so, collectible or noteworthy for value, monetary value. If somebody's willing to pay for them, even if it's maybe a little lower than you'd hope to get, so much better than trying to wrap it, take it to donation, and then the people there are unwrapping it and putting it on a shelf. All these different places it can break and no longer exists. So for those items that I feel, I get very attached to my homeowners. I get very attached to the things in their house. We stage the house to look like it's kind of like a cross between a home and a vintage, like, when you go into those houses that are antique malls, but it's an old house and each room has its own little essence or own room. We try to stage the house so that it's a cross between the house and a resale store. So it's like a pop-up store, like our store, like a mini Le Shop on location for our Changing Hands business. And it's very successful that way because it takes a little bit of the personal out of it. So people aren't so intimidated to say, can I have this for a few less dollars, especially if it's a neighbor down the street who's like intimidated to ask for something less, but wants a memory of that person that was near and dear to them. So there's different ways to do these, because sometimes I get people our generation who are just moving and changing the decor and need to sell things. So maybe the memories aren't so extreme. I find that unfortunately with each generation, we're getting less obsessed with our possessions and less emotional about them. And our parents and our grandparents' generation had more emotion attached to these possessions. But even when I go, like I visit my kids in Chicago, I go to all the little antique stores with my daughter, and I bought this iron bench. I love it. It's in my foyer, this little iron bench. He had no idea where it came from, whatever. So I create stories about it in my head. And now it's become a really living treasure to me, because I have narrow steps to my living room, and I have it right at the edge. And my mother-in-law, who's got Kanai Nahora, going to be 99, she uses that to walk into my living room. And that's like my iron, gorgeous railing bench. And to me, every time I see it, I picture my mother-in-law. So it's creating a memory in my house. So
I want to go back a little bit and talk about how you manage your actual estate sales, because I think you said something super important that I don't think the actual consumer realizes. I think they walk into an estate sale, and I always feel a little overwhelmed at first. It's like, being at Disney World, you're like, where do I go first?
Sure.
But you see a lot of stuff, and you see a lot of things. You see things in rooms that you wouldn't necessarily think that they go in that room. And there's sort of a method to the madness.
Sure.
So go back just a little bit about what that method is. And then you were telling me that if you go, let's say on a Friday at, noon, by 3:00, that one item might be somewhere else, which I found,
Right.
So tell people about how Changing Hands does the, stages and does things.
So what we do is, because I consider it almost like a little pop-up mini store, like our store, as we stage the house and I redecorate each house. That's my passion also. So when I walk in a house, I'm already saying that couch really shouldn't be in this room. It should be over there. That couch in the basement is fantastic. Let's bring it up. So I restage houses so that it fits my image of how I want it to look. And I'm also very specific for the consumer. If there is records in the basement and records on the main floor, and records in somebody's bedroom, I'm going to take all those and put them in a certain area, because not everybody coming to that sale wants records. But those people who do, they should be all together for that customer. And if there's mid-century furniture, I want it to, and there's a mid-century table in one room and a mid-century couch here or there, I will have my movers and I will reclaim that whole house. And in 2 days, we transform it where homeowners walk in and go, what? Wow, it doesn't even look like the same house. And then getting to your question, as we sell things, we morph the house, we pull out more things, we redisplay. And if it was very cluttered estate sale and now we sold a lot, I'll rearrange and remove things and put things. I always have that key spot that I know anything I put there is going to sell. And I will put another object there, because if you isolate something, then you can see it. And like you said, there's so much, how do you see anything? So certain objects I will isolate so people notice their beauty. If there's a glass window and I put my shelves there, I'll put the crystal where the light comes through it, or art glass so the light comes through it. Nothing I do is random, ever. My workers, who are lovely, they're like family, who help me stage houses, will always say, well, if I have to go and run an errand or run to the store, do other things, they'll say, it's okay, she'll move it anyways. So even though they're staging the house, I come back and I go, can we move this? And I want it to be vignettes. I want it to all look like still lifes. I taught art for 27 years. To me, every item has to be placed like a little still life. Everything's purposeful. I don't care if it's a bunch of little spoons. I don't care if it's a bunch of ceramic pottery. I'm not going to line it up like army soldiers. I'm going to make it in a vignette that looks beautiful and remake it like the way I would do it in my own home. And so
Okay.
as much as I love my gals and they do such a beautiful job, they know I'm going to walk in and say, can we just move? And I'm like, can we just move this a little bit? Or I want that chair on an angle here. And it's, even if it's for 10 minutes and it sells in 10 minutes, for those 10 minutes in my brain, it needs to be there. So when I walk into a home, I'm viewing how it's going to be staged from the minute I walk in there. Where's the cashiering? Where's the flow going to be? How am I going to want things to work for my clients so that I can sell as much as I can in 2 to 3 days? Because this pop-up store, what's in this house, and know that I'm trying to capitalize on the flow of the home and the population who walks in. Not, you know, and that's a big part of it. But I am going to change the subject for 1 minute so I don't forget to say this. Estate sailing is not like the old days. It's not about signs. I can do a house sale in a gated community with 0 signs and be successful. It's all about, which you're very familiar with, advertising on the internet. Everything that's in that house is on the internet. We have an eye contact list of over 6,000 names. We send out an eye contact every time we have an event, whether it be a sale in our store, an auction in our store, because we're also an auction house, what our estate sales are doing. Every week we send out 1 to 2 eye contacts for all the events that are going on. And then we do also capitalize on like estatesale.net with all the photos, and we do capitalize even on like Craigslist with a link to estatesale.net. Let's say you have a grand piano. I need to advertise that one item individually for somebody looking for a grand piano who would never think to come to an estate sale for one. So if I put it in another place as an individual item with a link to where it's at, I have more chances to sell those big elephants in the room than I would with just on one avenue of advertising. So we have to really capitalize on many things, and a little bit on Facebook Marketplace, Facebook, our estate sales get posted on there. Putting signs, people don't know what's in the house just from the sign.
Right.
So the new way to do them is all kind of like the new cyber technology.
So I want to just refer to the fact that Leslie's talking about that she is in a business with many partners, and they're changing hands. Estate is part of Le Shop 2. Le Shop 2 is an 18,000 square foot consignment shop of mid-century modern furniture with an auction house. I'm excited because next week I'm gonna sit down like this with one of your partners, and we're gonna really focus in on that aspect of the business. But what's really unique with the estate sale component that meshes with the mid-century modern, 2 things. One is that they stage the 18,000 square foot retail store with vignettes, just like you have to do the estate sale. But it's the same thing, that everything is about today marketing and showing your wares, what you have through, you know, the vignettes, showing your pictures. Because, I mean, a couple things have happened. One, you know, for Le Shop 2, you guys sell and ship all over the world.
Correct. We're on many, like First Dibs, Etsy, eBay. We have many, like 5 online stores that we sell through. So we're international business. And
Right.
Our auction house goes through Live Auctioneers, which is international. So we sell worldwide.
So what's interesting to me that, you know, when I started working with you, which was, you know, when I think about if you want to use an estate sale company, you know, there's no better company to choose than Changing Hands. And, you know, I'll let you really speak to this, because most people say, oh, I'm going to have a garage sale, or I'm going to have, I have far better wares, I'm going to have a 2-3 day estate sale. But, what we find is that you walk in and you find sometimes treasures
Yes.
that will go far wider than the 2 or 3 days.
Well, that's the nice thing, that we're an all inclusive business.
Mm-hmm.
I go into a house, I've got Deborah and Julie, and our partner in the auction house is Terry Stern, and I'll go through the house and I'm already looking for items of high value. What is clearly not going to sell in a 2 to 3 day sale that is too high value, and odds are that we're going to have to put it online or put it in our auction house to get the value it deserves. So what we do is, when I walk through the house, I might see several items and say, guys, this, homeowners, this is not going to sell in your estate sale properly. So we have 2 ways to handle that. One, we can do what's called a reserve price, meaning traditionally on the last day of sale, it's discount day and things are very dramatically up to 50% and sometimes more. But on these items, and we discuss it, we're going to have a reserve price. And if it doesn't sell for X amount of dollars, it's going to go to the store and we're going to consign it for you. So now you have a bigger audience to get what it deserves. Once in a while, an end user, not a dealer, will say, oh my gosh, I've been looking for that item my whole life. I cannot believe I found it at an estate sale. And we get the dollar amount it deserves at the house sale. And we give that opportunity to some end users around town, which they love. Second, sometimes we find items that clearly I do not want the responsibility to have them on site. We did an estate sale. It was not, let's say, it was a great amount of stuff, and I knew it was going to be a fantastic estate sale for the volume that was there, but there was nothing there that was out of the ordinary until I looked on the bookshelf and I see this brass thing sticking out that looked like a bookend, and I go, oh my gosh. I pull it out and my heart's beating and I'm going, you got to be kidding me. And I called Terry. I said, you got to get back here right away. You're not going to believe what I found. And she, unbelievable. It was a Bertoia sculpture, sonogramic little sculpture that maybe if somebody was new in the estate sale business or wasn't, inclined to know about art like Terry and I, they might have just thought, what is this? Put $75 because it's brass, or $100 on it. We took it to auction, and with the buyer's premium, it sold for over $30,000. And those are the kind of things I didn't even keep it there.
Did the owner know what it was?
I called her. She knew it was something special, but she didn't know how special.
Wow.
She knew that it had to be something unique, but she didn't even remember to tell me about it because it had been out of sight, out of mind. You know what I mean? So it was a, crazy story. And I found one time this lady, she, jarred jam and pickles, and I was in her so-called Passover kitchen in the basement, and I opened the cabinet and I see this crushed looking unusual enameled vase. And I go, you've got to be kidding me. And I apologize, I can't remember. It was a French artist, and it was actually a $3,000. It was only this big. It was a $3,000 vase that was purposeful that it was like that. And we sold that. And so you don't know what you're going to find.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes ugly doesn't mean without value, and sometimes beautiful doesn't mean with value. So you can't judge things, a book by its cover, as they say. And so we're very careful. When in doubt, we research. When in doubt, we try not to sell it. We try to explain, we don't want to sell this. We don't know who this artist is. We don't know where this came from. We're not going to try to quickly sell something that we have no idea what it is. We don't want to really make a mistake. And so we really want to give things the time and the research that they need. And that's why the team, between our Le Shop Changing Hands team, we do a lot of research and we have a lot of contacts. So if I don't know, I'll reach out to my contacts, and I have people that are experts in glass that I'm friends with, experts in furniture, experts in paintings, experts in so many venues. I've been doing this since I was 7. So I do have a huge database of wonderful people and that I turn to, and they turn to me. And I'm getting pictures all the time on my phone. I'm sending pictures. I have a guy who's really good with lamps, because sometimes there's some really cool mid-century lamps out there that you really need to know about.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to touch on one last thing, because I think it's really, really important now. Life is just not normal. It's just, probably not going to be normal for a while. And I think that, the truth of the matter is estate sales happen all year round. I think a lot of times we think of estate sales as this, spring, summer, but people move all the time. People decide to have estate sales for numerous reasons. You and I have talked about the fact that right now, estate sales are happening because people are moving. They're changing. Sometimes they're changing economics. Sometimes they're changing. Leslie's getting a phone call. That's what that means when we leave. So we know that we won't keep her much longer because she's a busy lady. But one of the things we talked about the emotion, and we know that right now some people are deciding to part with things that they love. I love that you and Deborah have the same philosophy, that if someone's going to part with something that they love, it goes to someone that will love it too. But what I want to talk about is how you are now handling estate sales, moving or shifting out of a little bit of the COVID world, because we really are in it. But so we did talk about that most of your sales are on estatesale.net. Is that
correct?
Yeah.
Our sales go on estatesale.net. They go on our website,
which is changing hands.
No, we do everything through our Le Shop.
Okay, sorry.
Website.
I should know that.
That's okay. You know what? It is confusing, and I know you one time told us that we were
you guys wait. So you listen to me. So everything is on Le Shop. Yay! I love when people listen to me.
I listen to you. Everything's on one situation, because this way we make sure everything's good. But I'm going to just do a quick 1 minute. Yes, during the COVID, people still had to move. So we did some cyber sales. People pre-purchased. I put everything online. They called me. They pre-purchased. I had social distancing pickup, and we did about 4 or 5 sales like that. It was difficult, but it worked for the people. They had no other way to liquidate their items. It was very difficult, and they were stuck. And the clear out, there is no donation centers open but one, and it was very difficult because you don't want to have to put things in the dump. I mean, that sounds terrible, but that's the truth. So we did those. And now when we do the sales, I have a plexi shield, and we set up like a whole room, and I have the shield that goes over my face. And we have hand sanitizer there. We have signs to say, please wear a mask when you enter. We have some if they don't. And up and down the stairs, we say, if you see somebody coming down or up, let that person go up or down. We have a whole bunch of rules. Let's just put it that way. Just because honestly, it's not necessarily the people who aren't at risk. Again, I don't want to sound like I'm not political, but it's just, God forbid somebody lives with a senior, and the senior has, an autoimmune or something, that becomes an issue. So we need to, be aware that there's some people who are very susceptible, and we need to protect them. And it's so lovely that people are willing to go out and be at an estate sale right now.
So the good news is that you're back. People can go through the estate sale, but there are precautions in place.
Correct.
And that the good news is because, Le Shop 2 has so many things under one roof. Yes. This is when I say Disney World, I mean it, because if you think when you think of Disney World, you have Epcot, you have every amusement park, but it's Disney World. So I told Le Shop 2, it's Le Shop 2, but you have the auction house, you have appraisals, you have estate sales, but it is one roof. And
Correct.
so you are going to go to leshop2.com. You are going to find how to consign furniture. You're going to find how to have things auctioned, and you are going to find everything that you need about estate sales. And when you also go to estatesale.net, you're going to be able to find Changing Hands.
And our auction house also.
And the auction house.
Yeah.
And you know, the good news is that I love I've always loved the name of the estate sale, Changing Hands, because
Thanks.
the truth is that when you think about it, it's changing hands into someone else who's going to love, you know, what they're buying. You know, you're parting with something you loved and giving it, and someone's there because they're a collector. They're buying it for someone else. They're buying it for their home
Right.
to enjoy and love. And
it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. So I love talking with you.
Thank you.
It was so much fun. And I'm looking forward to this summer when people can really go out and get to estate sales and start learning the story and the history of all these really special pieces. I mean, sofas have stories too.
Right. Well, you know, one quick side note, just to leave you with this, we've had more people either email, contact us, or come on our store and say, I could live in your store.
Oh.
They come in and they just
Was that me?
That could be one. I mean, we have a fabulous interior decorator. I don't want to, you know, and I just want to just quickly mention Deborah Slobin, Julie Sundberg, you know, Terry Stern, and Linda Rubin is our interior decorator. And not to discount that during the COVID, our whole staff with Harry and Amanda and Moish really kept us afloat, and really everybody working from home really went above and beyond during all of this for us to still be here to tell you about our story, and that we're still up and running, and hopefully for many, many more years.
It's a special team. And the store is in Keego Harbor, and which is, you know, an amazing, when I say 18,000 square feet of fun, it is, I mean, it is just a really special place with very special people inside. So I'm looking forward to, I get to have some fun with Deborah next week. That's always, she's always fun. And and I can't wait to swing by an estate sale. It's very dangerous when I walk in. You never know what I'll come home with.
You bring. But thank you again for doing this interview. This was fun, and everybody be safe out there.
You too. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.